Good morning, everyone. I didn't record anything yesterday because I knew it was going to be a high stress day because we were waiting to hear about the house, and then we did hear about the house, and unfortunately it was bad news again. They had 5 offers in total apparently, and the one that got the house offered significantly more than all the rest again. So that is just becoming a bit of a pattern at the moment. But anyway, it's fine. We move on. But anyway, as a result, I didn't really record anything yesterday because I just wasn't in the mood. So what I'm going to do for today is I thought what I will do is I will record a vlog as normal today, which you will see tomorrow. And then I'm just going to sit down and do the Q&A session with you, which I can then get edited and pop up as today's vlog. So there won't be a day missing. This is why I record a day in advance, because if I ever have issues like this or I ever have something that gets in my way, then I can still usually get a video up every day, and it just works for me. Anyway, Q&A. I put out some questions via both Mighty Networks and very briefly on YouTube yesterday. So I know there's not been a lot of chance to ask questions, but if anybody else has got a question that I don't answer during this video, then feel free to get in touch and ask it, and I can either just answer it to you in person, or I can keep them aside and maybe do another Q&A vlog at the end of the month or something like that. So I have a few questions. I have got 9 questions, I think. There were a couple of questions that were kind of about favourite TV series, favourite books, favourite movies, that kind of thing, which I'm not going to include in this vlog, but I will try and answer them in the next few days, basically. So I'm just going to go straight in for it. This video will probably be a little bit longer than my usual vlog videos, because if I want to give the questions, like the answer to the questions properly, then I'll need to talk. And you all know I love a tangent, so I probably will. But let's see. So I've kind of put the questions into an order. So to start with, there were quite a few questions about kind of jobs, so kind of what I used to do, about how I got into dyeing and that kind of stuff. So I've kind of put those in together. And then there were a few questions about kind of knitting and crafting questions. And then there were a few more questions kind of about life in general and kind of where I grew up and family stuff and things like that. So I've kind of grouped them all together. So I thought we'd start with the questions to do with work. So the first question somebody asked was, what was my career or my job before I became a yarn dyer? So I never really got a career before I became a yarn dyer, if that makes sense. So at undergraduate, I did psychology. So I have an undergraduate degree in psychology. I also have a master's degree in clinical psychology, but that came later. But I met Tom during my second year of university. We met... That's a question. Oh, I'm going to have to answer that question at the same time. We met both doing a summer job. We worked at Goonhilly Satellite Earth Station on the Lizard in Cornwall, which was kind of a tourist attraction. There were great big satellite dishes. It was all to do with the starts of kind of satellite communication. And they have great big kind of satellite dishes there, which... people can come and see the site. They can learn about like the history of communication and that kind of thing. And we were both tour guides, and we used to do bus tours around the site, which was quite good fun actually. And yeah, we met there. And we went back to, well, I went back to university because it was in my second year of, it was between my second and third year of university. I went to university in Bangor in North Wales. So I went back to university, we kept in touch, we visited each other throughout that year. Tom was doing a master's degree in criminology, I believe, somewhere in London, Middlesex, something like that. And yeah, we kept in touch and things went from there basically. But the end result of that was that when we got married, so we got engaged kind of after I'd graduated university, and as I said the other day, I got married at 22, so I'd only kind of just graduated university really when we got married, maybe a year after, something like that, possibly. Yeah, that sounds about right. Anyway, so Tom went on to do a PhD, and we got married while he was doing his PhD, and then he didn't get any funding. He didn't get any maintenance funding for his PhD. He got his fees funded for his PhD, but he didn't really get any maintenance funding. So basically, I just got a job. I finished university and I got a job, and I worked so that we could survive, basically. And I ended up working at a place called Leonard Cheshire Disability, which is a kind of a charity-based residential care home in Cornwall. Leonard Cheshire are a big charity that support people with physical and learning disabilities across the country. They have been around for absolutely years. A number of you in the UK probably will have heard of them. But I worked for a residential home down in Cornwall, and I was a senior support worker working on one of their learning disabilities units, which I absolutely loved. I mean, the work was hard, the shifts were hard, and it's hard work. But I loved working with adults with learning disabilities, and I thoroughly enjoyed that aspect of it. And I worked there for, oh goodness, I must have worked there for nearly 5 years, I think, something like that. Certainly until Tom had finished his PhD, and then he got a job and we moved up to London, and I got another job working in a residential home. Again, it was a small residential home in the community with a different company, and I was again a senior support worker there. So the way it worked was we had a manager of the home, and then I was the senior support worker, and then we had the rest of the staff. And honestly, I really didn't like it. The company I was working for then, I just didn't enjoy the way it worked. It wasn't very well. It was very demanding. So it was very much a case of you couldn't leave it at home, because as soon as you were on a day off, you would get a call to say that so-and-so had called in sick and you had to come in and cover their shift. And you just couldn't. It took over my entire life, that job, and I hated it. So conveniently, when I had Arthur, maternity leave became a good opportunity to leave. And then when I had Arthur, I hated the job in London, so I stopped doing full-time and I went down to part-time, and I started a master's degree at Kingston University, thinking, right, now's the time. Tom's got a good job, I can do something, I can kind of build to the point of having a career. And then, so I stopped doing that. No, see, now I'm going off on tangents and getting really confused. So I went part-time there and I did my master's degree. Then I had Arthur in the middle of my master's degree. Fortunately, I was doing my master's degree part-time. So anyway, I managed to finish my master's degree with a newborn baby. I still got a distinction as well, so I'm quite proud of that. And the one thing my master's degree kind of taught me was that actually I didn't want to be a clinical psychologist, which was what I'd originally been planning. So then after I obviously had the young kids, I had kids then, I had Arthur who was young, so I went back to doing care work through an agency at weekends, doing a lot of kind of work in old people's homes. I found a couple of really good learning disability places that I managed to get shifts at as well. And actually, after having Jasper, when I went back to work after having Jasper, I actually left the agency and started working directly for a respite unit for children with learning disabilities, which I loved. And again, that one was brilliant. I only did part-time. I was just doing bank work with them. But yeah, it was great because it was a respite unit. So they all lived at home and they just came in for kind of holidays and breaks and after school and the occasional overnight stay. I mean, it was all focused on like activities and fun and getting them out and about, which was really enjoyable. But when we moved up here, I was able to stop working because cost of living, basically. The cost of living in Dundee is a lot less than the cost of living in London. So we were able to afford for me to just work for Giddy Yarns. I started Giddy Yarns when Jasper was about 6 months old. So When we moved up to Scotland, I think it'd been about a year and a half. Giddy Yarns had been open already, something like that. So that's what I did basically. Before I started Giddy Yarns, I worked with adults with learning disabilities and within the care sector. It was all right. It paid the bills. It wasn't a career. Yeah. And then how long have I been dyeing yarn and what motivated me to start was kind of the next question. So I kind of started dyeing yarn when Jasper was born. I was on maternity leave and I didn't have much to do. And I'm one of those people that I need to be busy. I need things to do. And maternity leave, I found I needed something to focus on that wasn't just the children and wasn't just Jasper. So I started having a go at dyeing some yarn with food colouring, and it all kind of led from there. And I bought some acid dyes and I gave it a go, and we just thought, well, let's see what happens. Somebody suggested I gave it a go selling it on Etsy, so I did. In retrospect, I kind of wish that I'd taken longer before setting up my business. So I kind of feel like when I look back at what I sold when I first started Giddy Yarns, I don't feel that what I was selling was of a good enough standard to really be sold. Does that make sense? I think I would always recommend to any new business that's starting out, any new indie dyers, really take the time to learn how to dye yarn, to try lots of different styles and to get yourself into kind of a style. Don't just jump in, have a go at dyeing and then a few months later start selling it. Because I think that's going to make your building your business take a lot longer, which is how I found for me anyway. So there you go. So I've been dyeing yarn about 4.5 years probably, something like that. And if I wasn't a yarn dyer, what would I be? Now that's a really good question, because having not really established a career before I started yarn dyeing, I'm not 100% sure what I would do. I would probably retrain, because as I said, my master's degree taught me that I really didn't want to be a clinical psychologist. I didn't want that responsibility of kind of making people better, if that makes sense. And that had been my kind of intention from doing my psychology degree and doing my master's degree. Going into clinical psychology had been my intention. That's what I expected I was going to do with my career. And I loved my master's degree, don't get me wrong, I really enjoyed it. I loved the research side of things. And surprisingly, I really enjoyed the statistics side of things. There's a lot of statistics in psychology. But yeah, I didn't enjoy the counselling side of it, and I didn't enjoy that kind of feeling of responsibility of having to help people get better. So what would I be if I wasn't a yarn dyer? Well, I mean, possibly I would go back into academics. Part of me would be tempted to do a PhD. I feel like it's been too long now. I mean, it's been 6 years since I graduated from my master's degree. So I feel like maybe getting back into that academic frame of mind of writing kind of dissertations or all of that kind of thing might be really challenging. And I also have no idea what I would want to do a PhD on. But that's always a possibility, is that I could do that and then I could go maybe more into the academic side of psychology. But if I was looking for a more practical job, something that would be easier to just get into and do, I would be quite tempted to train as a teacher and work in a special educational needs school. Because one of the things I did really enjoy about the work that I did before being a yarn dyer was working with adults and children, actually, with learning disabilities. I really found that rewarding and I loved it. So I would be quite tempted to look at becoming an SEN teacher, maybe, something like that. I don't think I would go back into care work at all if I could avoid it. If I had to, if Tom suddenly lost his job and Giddy Yarns wasn't bringing in enough money and I needed to work, then fine. I've got the qualifications. I could go back into it. I could do it. But honestly, I hated the shift work. I hated so much of it. So I'm not sure that I would go back into that. But yeah, possibly academics with regards to psychology, maybe, or possibly an SEN teacher, something like that. I'm not sure. hopefully, I won't have to. Hopefully Giddy Yarns will continue to grow. My dream for Giddy Yarns in the future is what I would absolutely love is to be able to earn enough to rent some kind of shop front and have, similar to what Kelly at Lay Family Yarns has at the moment, have like a studio space within a shop where I could have my yarn for sale, possibly bring in yarns from other dyers and stuff like that, but also have a community space where I could run kind of workshops and do that kind of thing. But I could also dye and ship and everything from that location as well. So that's the big dream, that's the big goal, but I'm not quite sure how to do that or how to get to that stage, basically. Right, question 4. Right, moving away from the yarn dyeing stuff and into the knitting stuff. So, is there anything on my to knit list that I haven't cast on due to technique or difficulty level? If you've watched my podcast and things for a while, you'll know that colour work is my nemesis. I want to love colour work so much. I love the look of colour work, but I have tried so many times and I have yet to finish a decent project. I've finished a gnome. I have yet to finish anything other than a gnome using colour work. I've tried hats, I've tried cowls, I've tried mittens, and it just doesn't gel with me. It's not even a difficulty level. I can follow a chart, that doesn't bother me. That's not a problem at all, but I don't know, it's just something to do with I don't know. So again, it's kind of one of those things I'd love to master, but I also don't know if I've got the patience to master. One of the types of things that I have got on my wish list that I would love to knit is some more brioche things. I've got a brioche cowl on there. At the moment, it's quite a simple one, but there's some really gorgeous, complex brioche cowls. There's quite a lot by Lavanya Patricella. I'm not sure I'm pronouncing that right. She has lots of gorgeous brioche patterns, which I would love to be able to knit. And in fact, I've got yarn with plans to knit one, but they're always very daunting. And every time I kind of try to decide what pattern to do next, that falls to the bottom because I know it would take me forever and it would involve a lot of complicated concentration. So yeah, but other than that, there's nothing else that particularly daunts me. But I would say, yeah, brioche. I can do brioche. I've done it in a couple of projects. I've knit the Starflake by Stephen West and I've knit the Exploration Station by Stephen West, and they both involved brioche. So that's a possibility. I think it just ends up at the back of my list because I know that it's going to take me quite a lot of time. But colour work is my major nemesis. There's so many colour work things I want, and yeah, just don't manage to knit. They keep getting frogged. And question 5 is favourite item to knit. So I don't know. I really like knitting hats, actually. I find hats really satisfying to knit. I don't knit that many nowadays, but I do quite enjoy knitting hats. Obviously, I like knitting socks as well. I knit a lot of socks. But I think maybe I knit them because I know they're quite simple and quite quick projects. So I don't necessarily knit socks because I love knitting socks. I knit socks because they're easy to knit and I like to have things to knit on. Does that make sense? I'd love to be a big garment knitter. I've said that so much. And I want to build a love of knitting garments. But yeah, hats. I really enjoy knitting hats. I think they're one of my favourite things. I also really enjoy the gnomes. Yeah, definitely. There's a new gnome knit along coming in May. And yes, I am joining in for those that have asked. And I will do some kind of, sorry, I keep playing with my hair. Put them back there. I will do some kind of little knit along to go along with the gnomes, I think, as well. Right, let's keep going before this gets ridiculously long. So moving into more general life family questions. So somebody was asking that they remembered me saying that I'd lived abroad when I was young. Do I remember it, and have I been back, and things like that? And yes, I did. We lived in Switzerland. We lived in Geneva from when I was 2 till when I was 6, something like that. My dad went over there because of work, so we obviously all moved over there. My brother was actually born while we were living in Geneva. And I have vague memories of aspects of Geneva. Like I have vague memories of our garden in the house we lived in, but not particular memory. I have vague memories of like my friend Angela, who I still vaguely in contact with through social media, who I vaguely remember kind of going to her house and things like that. I have vague memories of school out there. I went to the international school, but obviously I was only 6 when we left, so literally like entry level school. But not masses of memories. But we have been back. We've been back to Switzerland a number of times. Growing up, we did a lot of skiing, so we used to go to Switzerland quite often to go skiing. And Tom and I actually went to Switzerland for our honeymoon as well. We had a very cheap honeymoon. We booked a coach tour honeymoon. So basically we flew to Geneva and we got a coach at Geneva with a whole load of people. We were by far the youngest people on this coach trip. And we were based at a place called, I've forgotten what it was called. I can't remember the name, but we were based at a little ski resort, but it was summer, it was April, so it wasn't a ski resort at the time. So we were based at this little resort up in the mountains in this little hotel. It was all a little bit dodgy and a little bit rough around the edges. We couldn't afford to eat out every night, so we ended up buying, literally surviving on like cheese and bread from the little supermarket. But the nice thing about it was that because we'd booked it as like a coach trip, we were based at this kind of hotel, but there were various coach trips that we could do. So we went to Bern, we went to Gruyere, we went down to the lake, and I've forgotten the name of the place on the lake, but we got to see quite a lot of Switzerland, and we got to spend a little bit of time in Geneva as well, which was really nice. And then a couple of years ago, we did a big family ski trip with my brother and his girlfriend, my mum and dad, and us and the boys. And at the end of that ski trip, we flew to and from Geneva. Although we went skiing in France, we flew to and from Geneva. And at the end of the ski trip, we spent a good day in Geneva kind of exploring, and my parents drove us past the house that we'd lived in and past the international school that I'd gone to. And so I have been back, and it's a lovely place. It's a lovely place to visit. The next question was just generally about living in Cornwall and what it was like living in Cornwall. So yeah, I grew up mostly in Cornwall. We moved around a lot. So we lived in Bedfordshire before we moved to Switzerland. Then we went back to Bedfordshire until I was about 12. Then we moved to Cornwall when I was 12, and that's kind of where we've stayed. My parents still live in the same house. But Cornwall was lovely. It's a lovely part of the country to live in, but it's very remote. So until I learned to drive, it was quite challenging in that you couldn't get anywhere in Cornwall without kind of family to help you out and family to drive you places. Buses they exist, but everything takes a very long time and they don't go very regularry. That might have improved since I obviously grew up there. So we're talking like 20 years ago. I mean, what am I now? 34. So when I was 14, and probably when I would have wanted so we're talking like 20 years ago. So yeah, it was lovely. It was great for summer jobs. I had some amazing summer jobs. I worked on St Michael's Mount. I worked in various National Trust gardens. It was brilliant for summer jobs, and it was great for kind of the summer holidays and being able to go out and about and explore and stuff like that. It does get very busy in the summer, and that was one thing that, although Cornwall very much relies on tourism for its income a lot of the time, it's still, as when you live there, it's very frustrating to find that like for 3 months of the year, it takes you half an hour longer to get to work because there's so much traffic and so many tourists. And obviously a lot of the beaches get very, very busy. But at the same time, you learn which beaches the tourists do know about and which beaches the tourists don't know about. And the tourists in Cornwall are known as emmets, which is Cornish for ants. So basically, all the Cornish people call the tourists ants because they just swarm to the beaches. But it is a lovely part of the country to live in, and it's definitely a lovely part of the country to visit as well. So I would highly recommend it. But yeah, it is very interesting living in a part of the country that is very tourist driven, because in the winter it's really quiet and there's not much open as well, which can be quite frustrating because a lot of the things kind of open mainly in the summer. But come summer, it gets really, really busy. The town we lived in wasn't as bad with that because it wasn't one of the big market towns, one of the big tourism draws. But I could imagine living in somewhere like St Ives or even Falmouth, it could get very busy. Right. How did Tom and I meet? Well, I've already touched on that, so I will move on from that. And then the final question was is Jasper a family name? No, it isn't. And I feel like quite often that we've named our child a dog name, because the number of people, when I say that he's called Jasper, the number of times I have heard, oh, we had a dog called Jasper. Yeah, so many people. It was the first thing that my grandma said when Jasper was born was, oh, I had a dog called Jasper. Like, oh no, we've given our child a dog's name. No, Jasper's just a very old-fashioned name, and you don't hear it nearly as much nowadays in humans anyway. So no, it wasn't. It was just a name we liked. Arthur is a family name. Both mine and Tom's granddad were called Arthur as their first names. So Arthur was very much a family name. It was a name we always liked, and we knew kind of as soon as we knew we were having a boy that was the name we were going to pick. But when it came to Jasper, we were a bit stumped because obviously we'd had a girl's name ready for Arthur because we weren't 100% sure whether we were going to have a boy or a girl until partway through. And then when we were having another boy, all of a sudden that girl's name kind of, oh, that's not going to work. We now need to come up with another boy's name. And it took quite a while. So yeah, Jasper was just a name we liked, and that was it. And we like it, and it suits him, actually. As frustrating as it is that people keep telling me that they have dogs named Jasper, Jasper suits him. So I wouldn't change it at all. Anyway, that's all the questions. This video is already probably longer than my normal vlog video, so I will leave it all there. Sorry that it's not a proper vlog today as such, but sometimes with the daily vlogs, it doesn't need to be daily life every day, does it? Sometimes a little bit different video is a good thing. Anyway, my alarm went off in the middle of recording this, which means I now need to go and do something with my yarn. I need to get this edited and get this up today so that we don't miss a day of vlogging. And I will see you all again tomorrow, or, well, today for me, but tomorrow for you. Bye.